I would look at where your time is already being spent and start tracking your time. I'm glad you did 15-minute increments. Like, I'm sure you got some great data, but that can be really intimidating for a lot of people. You use the word heavy lifting, right? It's awful. So instead of thinking it's all or nothing, I would just invite people just to start observing their time and just put everything, blocks of time, maybe on their calendar, whether it's digitally or if they're still using a paper calendar, that's okay. And don't worry about it being perfect and in 15-minute increments, but really start looking at the patterns, because that's going to give you where you can make tweaks and changes the quickest.
Amber, welcome to Entrepreneurial Money Stories.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
This is going to be a really fun episode today. Amber, I'm really excited for you to share your wisdom with our audience. Can you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your mission in the world today?
So my name is Amber de la Garza, and I'm the productivity specialist. I specialize in productivity for small business owners, and I specifically help small business owners around time management, business systems, how to lead their team at making business decisions. My mission in the world is to help business owners live a more joyful life by being more productive and enjoying their business.
That is a big and bold mission. You have your hands full.
I do, but I love entrepreneurship. And before I started my business, I really saw so many business owners, very talented people, just really struggling, really honestly on the verge of burnout and, almost closing shop. And I just think that is such a disservice to the world, that if you're so overwhelmed, so stressed out that the business isn't bringing you joy, you're not able to give your gift to the world. And I really think that there's a way in which that can be true, that you can run a successful business and enjoy it and be less stressed.
All right. So let's talk about what productivity is, because in my head, as you were talking, I was thinking productivity is kind of what leads to burnout, right? Like, we want to be so productive and check so much off the list, or work so in the hustle culture that's almost what causes burnout, is this goal towards maximum productivity at all times. So maybe you could tell us what productivity does and kind of how we can rewire our brain to think of it in the opposite direction.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if I could come up with a better word to describe what I do, I'd be all for it too, because unfortunately, that is a common belief around productivity, is it's solely about doing more. Or it's just about maybe perhaps being organized. If I'm not organized, I can't be productive. Or if I'm not color coding everything, I'm not, reaching my full potential. And I call BS on all of that. Truly, how I define productivity is we are our most productive selves when we're investing our best time, which is distraction-free, focused time when we're showing up our best, into our best activities. And it's really a framework, because our best activities are the ones that are going to propel us towards our goals. And not all tasks and projects and, ways we invest our time are created equal. And so simply put, when we are showing up our best and we're showing up and working on the tasks and activities that move us towards our goals, we're being most productive. And for today, of course, we're going to be talking about business, but honestly, we could be most productive in our personal lives. If we're, working out and taking care of our health, we can be most productive when we're in relationship with the ones we love. We're giving them our best and we're investing our time into those relationships, our kids, our significant others. And for me, that's just a word used to say, I am doing exactly what I should be doing, and I'm doing it my best.
Okay. I can see how and why you use the word. But you're right. It can have a whole separate kind of connotation to it. First, I was thinking about this situation that came up recently with this business group that I belong to. And we were talking about how we all have all of these notebooks, right? We carry around these paper notebooks because during this specific group, you're not allowed to use your phones or your computer. We all carry around these notebooks, and then we have Google Sheets and Google Notes, or some of us have iPads with the notes feature. And somebody was saying, my goal for the next 3 months is to figure out how I can maximize my productivity by organizing my electronic life. And I was like, wow, that's bold.
Yeah.
I can see the value in it, but I don't know that that's what lends us to being our most productive selves, is to be able to easily find documents, right? Like that's not how to be the most productive.
Right. Well, and so what I'll say is that, I am a huge proponent of organization being a skill set. It could be a part of behavior change. It is like plays a supporting role to being productive. It's not the same. So, for example, do you know someone that if you were to walk in their office, it was complete mess, like stacks of paper, you could barely see them behind their desk, and they were slaying their goals, like just nailing it? Do we know somebody like that? Probably. But we also know somebody that has a color-coded calendar, perfectly labeled files, nothing out of place, and they're still not reaching their goals. And so organization alone is not the same as being productive, in my opinion. Now, how does it play a supporting role? When you're telling me as a business owner, I'm struggling for time, I feel like I'm always out of time, I don't have time to work on my business, and yet you're spending your valuable time looking for lost things or recreating them digitally or can't access them when you need them, then that's very inefficient and not actually supporting you being most productive. So they kind of play hand in hand, but certainly different.
Okay, so they can support one another. When we start to think about redefining this for ourselves and thinking about how productivity can help us be more profitable, like where do we start, right? Because I think that when we can be productive and make the best use of our time, it lends a whole different, I don't want to say that now we have time to work on our business, to see our financials and to become more profitable, right? Because it's not all about time, but how can those two really clearly intersect, productivity and profit?
So I'll just first off and say that I am of the belief that our number one business goal, so business goal, not goal in our lives, but business goal should be to run a profitable business. And by running a profitable business, it affords you the ability to, get support, afford new technology if you need it. It affords you less stress because you're not worrying about paying the bills. By running a profitable business, it is the way in which you could use those resources to do anything that really matters. You can take more profits out of the business and donate and do volunteer work. You could choose to work less and donate your time. But for me, it all goes back to profitability so you can run a healthy business that can provide not just for your team members, but for your clients whom you serve. With that being said, as business owners, in my opinion, it gets really diluted. It gets diluted with, I have this project, I have this initiative, I have this marketing thing. These are all these goals that we set for ourselves. And oftentimes it dilutes our focus of priority to say, how am I impacting the business's profits? How am I on a regular basis as the business owner contributing to a successful, healthy business? The way in which this intersects is that as a business owner, I often get asked, okay, great framework, Amber. Thank you for that. But what are my best activities, right? So I have a framework that says invest your best time into your best activities. And I get a head nod, but then you're left with, but I don't know what I should be doing. What is the most important things in my business? And as a small business owner, I believe that our highest value activities fall within 4 buckets. And they're all a direct line to profitability in the business and serve profitability in different ways. So I would love to share those with you.
Yeah, please share. And I'm curious to hear how they each directly relate back to profitability, because usually there's something that's softer within there. So yeah, let's go through them.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a small business owner, we are personally going to be responsible for these things, or as we grow and scale, we're going to be responsible in leading others to these high value activities. And so I'll just start with bucket number 1. So bucket number 1 is marketing and visibility. So you're letting the world know what it is you do and how you can help them. And this is number 1 because you can be incredibly talented. You could have the best service, the best widget, the best product. But if no one knows what it is you do and how you can help them, you don't get the ability to serve your clients and sell your product and make a profit. So number one is if you're looking at your calendar and you're asking yourself, was I productive this week? Did I invest my best time into my best activities? I would most certainly want to see some sort of marketing and visibility project or task on a regular basis. Or if your team is bigger, that you're leading somebody and ensuring you're watching those metrics and those numbers, that the marketing and visibility is happening on a regular basis. Hello, Amber here. I have a question for you. Are you a business owner who wants to reduce stress, reclaim time, increase profits, and simply run a better business? Of course you are. Then I invite you to check out my private peak performance coaching program, where I coach you on productivity, time management, business systems, team building, strategic decision-making, and mindset to help you overcome your challenges and succeed in business. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/coaching to learn more and schedule your free discovery call.
So can we approach this kind of like how we approach finances, right? So I'm always talking on the show about how we have to look backwards in order to look forward. So should we look at our schedule over the last 30, 60, 90 days and what's been in our calendar to assess how much time we've spent in this first bucket so that then we can plan how we want to allocate that time moving forward?
I mean, that's a great advice, right? Like if I were to be helping you create your ideal week where you feel like you're in balance and you're consistently showing up in these buckets, if you were just to pull a number out of your hat and say, okay, right, moving forward, 3 hours a week, marketing and visibility, what if 3 hours is less than what you've already been doing? Maybe it's so much more than what you're doing that the gap is too large and that you need to incrementally set some milestone goals from maybe it's 0. Maybe you're doing like an hour a month, maybe 2 hours a week or 1 hour a week consistently is a far more better improvement. So yes, we got to know where we're at. We got to understand where we want to be. And in my opinion, it's the plan between that you're incrementally getting there. Okay. So this isn't like a crash diet. Suddenly you hear a podcast and you're like, oh, great. Amber said I need to be in marketing and visibility and we'll get to the others. And, my schedule's completely changed. That's like going on a crash diet. It may work for a minute, but it's not sustained like behavior change. And oftentimes you're setting yourself up for failure because you're not addressing the reason why you weren't showing up in those areas of your business in the first place. And oftentimes those things, if you have a lot of fires in your business or you have a team member that's taking a lot of time or you don't have the right support, those things do need to be addressed and worked on so that the end goal is you're consistently showing up your best in these areas of your business.
Let's pause. I want to pause on 2 things that you said. What exactly is marketing and visibility? Right? Like, how do you define that? What the heck even is that?
First of all, it is very different for each industry or business owner. And so that's why I like to say it's really how are you letting the world know what it is you do and how you can help them? I mean, we've seen extremes in marketing. I mean, it used to be newspapers and magazines, and then I went to like all these digital and Facebook ads, and now people are pulling away from that. You and I are doing marketing and visibility right now by me being a guest and you being a podcaster. I'm a podcaster. That's letting the world know every single week how we can help them, what our expertise is. You could do a YouTube channel. You could be going to a networking event. You could be in a peer-to-peer business group. The method is not as important as the consistency. And here's why. You can find a success story in any method of marketing your business, but the key is you're going to find that they were consistent with it, right?
Well, we were just talking about podcasting before we hit record.
Yeah.
That this is a long game that takes a long time, that you have to show up consistently week over week, month over month. But I love that high level overview that you gave, that it doesn't have to be one specific thing. I just wanted everyone to have kind of a guiding principle.
Sorry, I want to add to that really quick. So I just want to give an example. So I started my business almost like over 12 years ago. And when I first got in, it was blogging. Blogging is the thing everyone was talking about. So of course, I thought that's the way I have to do my marketing and visibility. So I started blogging and I hated it. I don't like writing. all of my blogs were me pacing behind my assistant talking. If that wasn't a good enough clue, I should be podcasting, but it wasn't. I just said that's what everyone's doing and I did it. But here's what I didn't ask myself. I didn't say, what do you really enjoy doing that's path of least resistance that you can show up consistently? And once I realized that I was listening to podcasts and writing blogs like unhappily, and I switched to podcasting, it's been over 5 years. And while it is hard work and you have to show up, it is much easier for me to be consistent with it. And that's why it works for me. It highlights how I can show up best. So my advice is find the thing that you enjoy doing that you will get better at over time. I mean, if you listen to my podcast from 5 years ago, they're not what they are today. And so it's not about being the best. It's like, is there an opportunity to show up consistently and enjoy it? So I just wanted to add that to anyone that's thinking, what should I do for marketing?
Yeah, thank you. All right, I know we have 3 others to get to, but I want to pause on something else that you said. If we have something that's happening in our business that's causing us to not be able to show up consistently, how do we start to identify that? Because I think as business owners, there's a million things that can pop up that can keep me from being on this podcast with you today. How do we know when it's a problem or are we the problem? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I actually have a podcast episode that says the episode title is Whose Fires Are You Putting Out? And we use the term fires, which are like urgencies. There's things your team needs, your clients need, the vendors need, you name it. There's a problem that needs to be solved. And in that episode, as a spoiler, I share with you the idea of self-created fires. So how many of these things are fires you're dealing with today because of action or inaction you took yesterday, last week, last month, last quarter? And that could look like you don't have proper training for your team, or you don't have clear boundaries with your clients. You don't have consistent communication. I will say that this is probably one of my big gifts that I have, is being able to work with my clients and hear them speak and really see what the root cause is of these fires, these challenges, the things that pull them away, and so that they can work on those and fix them. But one tip that everyone can leave here and do for themselves is, if you're blocking out time for any of these high value activities we talk about today, and you simply track the reason why you didn't show up for it over a month or 2 months, you will see a pattern. You will see, oh my gosh, Sally, my team member Sally, it has a fire every time I have to do marketing or sales. Like if you asked me that, I wouldn't know that. But now that I tracked it, wow, I can see a pattern. Or maybe it's that your deadlines, like there's always a client deadline. And so that supersedes marketing and visibility, because this is long-term game. A deadline is a now thing. If I saw that consistently of like, hey, Amber, I just had to make the decision of like hitting this deadline, like I couldn't go do the marketing and visibility, I would be looking at, well, what are your processes? What does your support look like? There could be various things causing that, but at least it gives you some clues as to where to go look to start solving for those things.
All right. So first up, let's look backwards to look forward. Track what we're doing today. And look, I did this earlier this year. I tracked my time for, it's like 45 days and I did it in 15-minute increments. It was a pretty heavy lift to track the information, but what we found from it was what I was actually working on and any issues and gaps within the team that needed to be addressed. So looking backwards is always going to help us be able to look forward and plan as we move forward. All right. I know that was a long derailment in the first one.
No, that's okay. And many of the questions we covered will be beneficial to all the buckets. So it's all good. They were great.
Okay. What's our second bucket?
Okay, so bucket number 2 is sales, right? So if you're showing up consistently and marketing and visibility, your leads should be overflowing, and now you get to have sales conversations. So, on your calendar or my calendar, if we are in charge of doing the consultations or discovery calls or proposals, that's a high value activity that's closest to the dollar. We are asking somebody for business. What is that activity in your business? And whether you're solely responsible for it or not, if you are, it should be on your calendar. If it's not, what would be on your calendar is looking at the metrics of how many discovery calls are there? What's your conversion rate? Is the person doing the discovery calls, consultations, proposals trained well enough to be able to close the deals, right? So your role could change as your business changes, but the actual sales department, I didn't say that. So I'm calling these buckets because we're small business owners. But if we thought of any large business, they have a marketing division, a sales division, a client services division, a leadership, we'll get to that. They're different departments. So even if you just left today's episode and thought of your small business having different departments and you happen to be the lead manager, the leader of each of these departments, you'd have to show up in each department to know that they're running well.
Today's show is brought to you by Kickstart Accounting, Inc. Are you ready to take control of your finances and pave the way to sustainable profit? Look no further than Kickstart Accounting, Inc., your trusted bookkeeping service since 2015. They've worked with thousands of other business owners, so they understand your unique needs. What really actually sets them apart, though, is that they're entrepreneurs themselves, dedicated to entrepreneurs like you. Kickstart Accounting Inc.'s strategic framework empowers you every step of the way. They will start with their safe and secure onboarding process, use their magic to set up QuickBooks, and provide you with their easy-to-read financial snapshot. Don't forget, you'll have a dedicated team to ensure that your financials are accurate and on time. Don't let bookkeeping overwhelm you. Trust the Kickstart Accounting Inc. team today. Visit kickstartaccountinginc.com to book your discovery call and get started.
Do you recommend that sales and marketing or marketing visibility are on the same days? So if you are the person responsible for looking at the metrics to monitor the progress, do you recommend that they are done on the same day, or does it really matter? Does it help us be more productive or less?
No. So I think if I understood your question, it was, should you do marketing activities and sales activities the same day? No, I do not believe so. But I do believe in batching. So I would not want to see marketing every single day on your schedule. I would rather see that there's a morning that's dedicated to marketing, or there's a couple hours where you're batching maybe different marketing activities. Would always suggest that there's certain days that your calendar is open for sales appointments and certain days are just not available, right? So for me, Mondays and Fridays are not available for discovery calls, consultations. But because that allows me to focus those days, theme my days differently for different types of activities.
Absolutely. All right. What's bucket number 3?
Okay. Bucket number 3 is servicing your client. So I specifically work with majority of my clients are service-based business owners, which means the business owner's skill set is what is being sold, where they're an architect, an interior designer, a therapist, you name it. This is the thing that they're serving. So bucket number 3 is when you are serving your clients. If you have a product-based business, it's you maybe developing the product or improving the product or some sort of customer service around selling the product. Servicing your clients is a high-value activity, especially if you're the only one doing it. Because I see 2 extremes happen with this bucket. One extreme is that this is the bucket that can actually sabotage all others. Because you and I could probably, if we've never met and never spoke, agree that servicing your clients is closest to the dollar. That's how you get paid. However, with knowing that, it can suck up all of your time and be the reason you don't show up in filling your pipeline with marketing, visibility, and sales, and maybe not even showing up for your team, which we'll get to that. So having balance is just as important as, showing up. So one extreme is this is where all your time and energy is going at the expense of the other buckets. The other extreme is that you have no time to serve your clients because you're so busy putting out fires and running circles, and you just feel like there's just never enough time to actually deliver the service. And that could look like you're missing deadlines, you're not returning phone calls, you're not communicating with your clients. Why is that you cannot consistently show up and serve your clients? So, and of course, there's everything in between. But at the end of the day, when I have blocks of time where I'm coaching or doing a group coaching session, that's a high value activity. That is when my company is getting paid. And so we do not want to squeeze that out. We want to make sure we're protecting that.
All right. So I think we can clearly see the way the first three align with profitability. What's bucket number 4?
So bucket number 4 is leadership, leading your team. And I would argue that this is absolutely a direct line to profitability, because as your business grows, the only way you could serve more clients and have more profitability is if you have people helping you do that. And leading them. So some business owners may be listening and they have teams, but they're not thinking me leading the team is a high value activity. What is leading your team? It means communicating with them, giving them what they need to do the job well and be delegated to. Perhaps it's training or providing training. It may be having one-on-one meetings with them or team meetings. This was actually added, to be honest, a couple years after I created this framework. And I didn't always have bucket number 4 as leadership. And the reason I realized it was much needed is because I had my clients come to me saying, I have to meet with so-and-so. Oh my gosh, I have to run another team meeting. Oh my gosh, I have to hire, I have to train. Like this is like not what I should be doing. And every time I was like, actually, yes, this is exactly what you should be doing. This is a high value activity that will absolutely grow your business. And so if I could help my clients understand that this was a necessity and of great value to the business, it didn't become something they had to do. It was something they get to do in service of their business and their profitability. And that's really what I think leadership should look like as we're growing our businesses, is something we are excited to show up to, because every investment of our time multiplies by the hours they're working when I'm not doing that activity or task. And so where else in our businesses, can I invest 1 hour, just for example, and get 4 back? Like if I could do that with my money, if I could, invest $1 and get $10 back, like it's a great investment. And so when you flip that and think about, if I can invest, 4 hours a week in my team and I'm getting 40, 80, it depends on how many team members you have back. Is that a good investment? Yes, absolutely.
Would you agree that part of this is just discomfort for business owners? We hear from a lot of our clients that they went into business because they were really good at their craft and they don't feel as strong in running the business. And that includes marketing, right? That might include sales. They want to do client service. So maybe they are running around putting out all the fires because that's where they feel comfortable, because that's why they went into business in the first place. And then leadership, we're back to outside of our comfort level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I heard this so often, the phrase of some version of I'm an accidental business owner. Like I went to school for XYZ profession. I had this skill set. I woke up one day and oh my gosh, I realized I had a business. Oh my gosh, I woke up and it feels like the next day and I have this team and like, what am I doing? And how do I get these skills? Like all I want to do is the thing I started my business to do, right? I actually bought the domain Accidental Business Owner, and I started a second podcast last summer, like a little project podcast called Accidental Business Owner, all because that resonates so much of like, well, where do I go get these skill sets? I would hear versions of, well, I didn't go to school for business, right? And I'm sure you hear that a lot too. That's why they may avoid the money side. They avoid the numbers, is because they tell themselves, I haven't been educated in this and I don't understand it. And I believe literally that is the foundation of my business, is that these are skill sets that can be learned. And if we can, see them as very important to the business, our businesses are very much like a child to us, right? Like they're an extension of us. And so when I think about that as a mom, I think about, well, what would I do as Mama Bear? Like I would want to protect the business. I would advocate for the business. I would do whatever I need to do for my son. And I think it's the same for our businesses. And if we can think like, well, my business needs me to understand marketing and sales enough that maybe I'm just leaving somebody else to do it. My business needs me to understand the numbers so that I can comfortably pay my team members and provide for my family. It just shifts that conversation a bit of like, wow, I get to do this because I'm like protecting the business.
I like that sense of protecting the business. I always think about, my kids are getting a little bit older, and I keep on joking with my son. I'm like, come on, you're going to help me flip over the laundry. He's like, I'm not helping you. I'm like, no, what we're doing is getting you ready for college. Like, you have to know how to flip over the laundry, or come help me make this dish. Or he's like, I don't want to cook with you. I'm like, I'm not asking you to cook with me. I'm trying to show you how to take care of yourself. Right. So as parents, we really need to teach our kids how to take care of themselves. And so as our team gets bigger, and as we are leading into more of leadership, teaching our team how to care for the business, care for themselves in the way that we would want them to. So I think that helps us be able to kind of step into that leadership bucket. Yeah. For somebody who's listening who is like, okay, I hear you, but where do I even start, right? Like what do I even do to start to grasp my head around this and find some action in here?
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically, you spoke to it at the beginning, but I would look at where your time is already being spent and start tracking your time. I'm glad you did 15-minute increments. Like, I'm sure you got some great data, but that can be really intimidating for a lot of people. You use the word heavy lifting, right? It's awful. And so instead of thinking it's all or nothing, I would just invite people just to start observing their time and just put everything, blocks of time, maybe on their calendar, whether it's digitally or if they're still using a paper calendar, that's okay. And don't worry about it being perfect and in 15-minute increments, but really start looking at the patterns because that's going to give you where you can make tweaks and changes the quickest. The next thing I would say is I would love for you to learn how to create your ideal week. And your ideal week will be how much time and what days and in what balance are you investing in these 4 buckets. And the key here is that I think many listeners and yourself have heard of block scheduling. But what I want to say differently about this is your ideal week is the goal. So now you need to create milestones of between where you're at because you're looking at what your calendar currently looks like. You're creating what you want it to look like. And how do you take these little steps to then step into that? Honestly, that's the work that I do with my clients is like, how many hours do you want to be working? Where do you want your time spent? And you step into that incrementally and you hold the line, right? Because things happen in life. People quit in your business. Someone gets sick in the family. You may get sick. It's like, how do you keep the goal is like, I am working towards this more balanced, ideal week of a schedule.
We are going to look forward. So look back at our calendar, maybe consider some type of time tracking, and then look forward, set our ideal week using our four buckets. I'd like to add a 5th one. That's finance. Can I add a 5th one?
Yes. So when I teach this full out, underneath it is operations. So it's 4 pillars. And then the foundation is operations, and finances is definitely part of that. And you'll be happy to hear I have it blocked out on my schedule twice a month. It says profit first. I show up consistently in finances. I agree. And I was remiss to say so. And I'm glad you did, because it is really important to watch those numbers and do what you need to do on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said this a few times throughout, as we talked about each of the buckets, is that as your team grows, this time might be spent reviewing the metrics. So just because you have a team member who might be doing the sales calls for you or the marketing for you, your job is still as the CEO to look at all of the metrics within that category and to be able to provide that leadership. And so that goes, finances aren't just our P&L and our balance sheet and the financial snapshot that you're getting from your bookkeeper, but it's also what are the financial metrics or metrics period in each of those categories that you need in order to be able to operate the business at a high level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure you hear this a lot. Like, I don't like numbers. And I just think that if you understood what the numbers could tell you, and I'm sure that's the work you do, like you'll fall in love with it. I guess that's my answer is like, once you realize how to read the numbers and what they're telling you, it's just a different game. It's such an easier way to understand your business than staying in the weeds and the stories and the drama and the fires and all the things that happen to all of us in our businesses. Can actually be something you look forward to for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Where can the audience stay in touch with you, learn more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am also a podcaster. I have a podcast called Productivity Straight Talk. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure we're there. And then my website is amberdelagarza.com. There you can find free resources, free mini training. I have a training called Take Back Your Time, as well as links to all my social media and ways to work with me.
Awesome. Amber, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.